Brothers and sisters, welcome back to another edition of The Last Dispensation. We are here with some of your favorite hosts. You guys know them very well. Marco Guerrero and Christian Homestead Jared. Marco Guerrero is from Truth Matters, right? Did I say that right? Truth Matters?
What? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It was Truth Matters back in the days. It's
okay.
Brother Guerrero now.
It's Brother Guerrero. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right. So we're here and we're going to be discussing some interesting things, right? Everything we have to talk about is interesting.
It'll be pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah. We have this is an article in LDS, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.org. What should our attitude be regarding zodiac signs, astrology, and horoscopes? We will be reading and commenting. So I'll just go ahead and read. Is that all right, folks? Okay. So let me start. This is by Burt Horsley. This article was written in 1972, by the way.
Yeah, I noticed that like when you do a search, like you'll get a lot of articles that come up from the church website, and a lot of them are from the early 70s. And I'm assuming because that's when like the hippie
right
started.
I was going to have some hippies in the background, but it didn't work. Flower children, the age of Aquarius, baby.
Or maybe a bunch of crystals or something like that.
Yeah. All right. I don't know. That might be going too far. No, I'm playing. Okay, you guys ready?
Yep.
Okay. Hold on a second here. Basically, our attitude should be the same as it is about fortune telling, reading tea leaves, crystal ball gazing, or palm reading. And then I guess we could add energy healing too. That's a big one today. I don't know if they had that back then. But here we go. To put it bluntly, any trust in such things is sheer superstition. So like I said, this was written back in 1972. And it's interesting because I looked up on the church website and it even has the definition for astrology. Well, not the definition, it had synonyms, sorcery and superstitions.
Yeah, in the topical guide.
In the topical guide. So if that tells you something right there, so many who are involved with astrology or practice teaching it are basically involved and other practices the church hasn't condoned, for example, energy healing.
Well, let me back up for just 1 second.
Go ahead.
Because I looked at that same thing. I went to the topical guide. There wasn't anything in the Bible dictionary, but there was in the topical guide. And then, like you said, it redirects you to, it says either see sorcery or superstitions. If you click on sorcery, that says see also false prophets, magicians, and then superstition again. So it's like within that realm of like false prophets, right?
Right. Exactly. All right. So here we go. Historically, there has developed a problem of discrimination that centers around the failure of otherwise straight thinking people to distinguish between astronomy as a bona fide science and astrology, which is a counterfeit or pseudo science. So here's the difference. Astronomy is a science that studies everything outside of the Earth's atmosphere, such as planets, stars, asteroids, galaxies, and the properties and relationships of those celestial bodies. There's a big difference. Astrology, on the other hand, is the belief that the positioning of the stars and planets affect the way and events that occur on the Earth and basically people's lives, right?
Yeah. So here's my question, okay? So recently it was talked about how Astrology, it's just like the weather. Like if you know that the Earth starts tilting, like the northern hemisphere starts tilting toward the sun, then it's going to be summer in the northern hemisphere and winter in the south. So like the same arguments being made where, well, if you know where the planets are, and if they're coming close to Earth, if there's like a conjunction, if they're aligning, if they're in a certain constellation, then it means this. But my problem is, okay, well, if that's true, where does that knowledge come from? Like if I were to like study it out, where is it going to take me? Who came up with these, observations? Do either of you two know?
I know it goes pretty far back esoterically, doesn't it? To like the Himalayas or Egypt.
Yeah, but like my point is, I don't think it's based on anything scientific. If it was scientific,
No.
if it was like a known fact that Pluto, making its way back around to us is going to have this kind of effect, and if it was like well documented and like supported in science, if it's something that you could study at the university, then maybe it would be something that we could take seriously. But where do they get that information? Where does it come from? How long ago? What's the authoritative source of like,
well, I know
what
right.
Pluto means?
You would have to go back to Babylon, the Babylonian wizards and Himalayan sages.
Most likely. I don't know.
Yeah. Did you have something to say?
So I have, you guys are going to be surprised and shocked about this. So I used to study temple symbols. A lot of symbolism in there. I was really into it. I would say, I don't know, a few years. I would say at least 5-6 years, almost around the time I was making my videos. And I learned a lot from those symbols. And so I guess the question is, what do you guys think of those symbols?
Well, I think there's a difference, when it comes to symbols are used because they can encode information just inherently for what they are. So without even knowing anything, if you see a symbol, if you like play around with it, if you look at it, you study it, then it has inherent truths that come out that anybody can come to the same conclusion. So inside the temple, there's a lot of those, and there's a lot to study. And I think a lot of people who have taken the temple seriously have tried to study those things. And there's actually a lot of information out there that you can get into. But when it comes to astrology, there's nothing like that at all in the temple. We're talking about people interpreting, Jupiter means this, Saturn means this. When it's in this position, this constellation, it's going to affect you in this way. And that, it's wrong.
So let me
no, go ahead.
This might be some new to you. Did you know that Joseph Smith actually drew a planet? It was like 3 planets, and they were like in a pole position, I guess, in an alignment. You know anything about that information?
Actually, I think I came across a website one time by one guy that was talking about that. I didn't get into it too deep.
Okay. And it might have been Anthony Larson. You might have Anthony E. Larson. He passed away years ago. So
for me, it might have been like about 10 years ago. So I really don't.
Oh yeah, he's been doing this since way back. I mean, way back. He actually wrote books, and they were on Deseret Bookstore. And they had it was Mormon Prophecy is what it was called. And so because it was named Mormon Prophecy, when members of the church at that time, they were all into it. Like, ooh, they bought his books and they learned a lot from those books. I have learned quite a bit myself.
What year was this? How long ago?
Oh, I don't know. I would say probably in the 80s. I could be wrong.
Okay.
I could be wrong. But he talks about a lot of the symbols.
When you bring it, go ahead.
When he talks about a lot about the symbols and why people believe certain beliefs of astrology and things like that. He didn't necessarily taught astrology. at all. It was more about what Abraham, what they saw, what the old prophets have seen, and why things were written the way it was written in the Bible. So it had me understand a lot more the Bible. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the Bible is. Some people might, when they learn that stuff, they might take it differently. Like, oh, he's trying to say that maybe the Bible is false or something like that, like, or something in that nature. But it's not. It's actually teaches you even more. And from what I know, remember how Joseph Smith said that there will be a planet of some sort. People would think it would be a comet, but it will be like a planet will come or something like that. Remember that?
Yeah.
That it'll be the kingdom of heaven. I think
It'll be the sign of the sign. That'll be the sign of the Son of Man. So what people are to expect to see is I hear different views, interpretations of that. Okay?
I think. Can I add something real quick?
Mhm.
I think the difference between astrology and looking at the planets, Matthew 24, the signs of not just the heavens, but the seasons and things like that, is those are things taking place outside, in the heavens and on the earth. But when you get into astrology, isn't that taking what's going on in the heavens and applying that to people's personal lives and reading
That's horoscope, isn't it?
Yeah,
Is that
that's what
part of horoscope?
astrology. That's basically the catalyst of astrology.
So I think we're talking about three things. If you break it up to these three different parts, we have astronomy, which is a scientific study of celestial bodies in space. And then we have what we as members of the church believe about the planets and stars. And we do believe that they're for signs and they're for seasons. We know that, when the moon turns to blood, that's basically like an eclipse and it's a sign. When the sun gets darkened, that's a sign. And there's been different signs throughout the scriptures, and it's something that's really important to Judaism. And we know that, they have a lot of truth. So they base a lot of their things off of a lunar calendar and different things. So we have these two things. We have astronomy. We have astronomy as it relates to the church and how we know the Lord uses those things for signs. But then we have this third group that's kind of involved in horoscopes and in the New Age. And that's basically mostly what we're talking about is like these people that are
counterfeiting patriarchal blessings, priesthood blessings, the power of discernment that that by the power of the Holy Ghost and things like that. It's counterfeited basically.
Well, because like if we want to look into the future, if we want to get guidance for the days ahead, there's three different ways that we can get that. One is reading the scriptures, because the scriptures are full of prophecy and they tell us what's going to happen. Two, we have a living prophet the definition of a prophet, he's someone that can see into the future and give prophecy. So we have a prophet that probably knows to some extent how certain things are going to happen, whatever the Lord wants him to know, and then share with us. And then on a personal level, if that's not good enough, and it's not, on a personal level, instead of turning to horoscopes to see, what your natal chart is, which is where when you're born, the planets are in certain positions, and then it's like unique to you. So you pay attention to like when Saturn comes back around or Jupiter comes back around or whatever, and that's supposed to mean something. So if you're looking for something on a personal level, we already have that in the church in both patriarchal blessings and then just the pure power of prayer and asking Heavenly Father for guidance. What should we do in the future? So horoscopes is like a counterfeit of prophecy, scriptures, patriarchal blessings, and prayer, because like you're trying to like determine what's going to happen based on the planets. And they're going to say, well, it's like the weather, but it's not, because they're knowledge base, again, where does it come from? It's based on like mystery schools. It's based on any sort of like what was going on back in the past, like apostate things.
So, do you think there's members of the church that actually believe in horoscope? I mean,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm assuming, yeah, probably here and there, but I don't think, I mean, long-term members of the church would still believe that?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that if you're a member of the church and you've been a member your whole life, you're probably less likely to believe in that kind of thing. But there's a lot of different things that are like creeping into our church right now. Lots of different philosophies, both like secularism and worldly philosophies. But like one thing,
Right.
and this is just kind of like a recent pickup, is like some LDS energy workers, you know, and self-proclaimed astrologers that are showing up on different platforms and actually influencing people that are watching that stuff. And like you go to the comment sections and you can see that there are people, shockingly, that are LDS that, you know, give that stuff their time and their energy and their money.
Yeah.
So
It's
probably not a whole lot, but some.
It's
No,
not like,
I've seen there's people that pay big money for that.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like the same thing as when we used to read the horoscopes out of the papers. And I mean, my wife and I'm a Libra, you know, and I don't know what my wife is. I forgot. And we'll play around with those once
You
in a while.
forgot? Wow, man.
It's not, but it's like reading a fortune cookie, you know, from after you've eaten Chinese food. That's not, I don't think, what we're talking about here. Like Jared said, it's something that's just a part of it, but there's a whole bunch of other things involved. And a lot of people that are gurus of astrology, they're getting into the crystals, the energy healings, the chakras, and which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
I think it's a bad thing.
Well, it's a bad thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Let me share something with you. There's this website. I'm not going to say who it is, but it's one of these members of the church that's an energy healer, which is specifically talked about in the church handbook and also in all these articles in the Ensign and other places. This person, okay, so for to book a personal astrology reading, that's just going to cost you $450 if you want that. $450, you know, I presume for this person to put together your natal chart and tell you, you know, when to expect certain things to happen in your life. So it basically is a type of horoscope. Again, they're going to use the argument, well, it's just like the weather, but it's not. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
$450, that's a great deal.
Well, I know it's not even $500.
I'm paying that.
You got these
He's
energy
being
work.
sarcastic.
You got these energy work sessions that you can pay for. There's financial healing. This says this session is
That's
specifically
crazy.
for breaking down blocks and resistances to financial abundance.
Yeah.
And like this person is into like the chakras. Like there's like a specific class you can take about the chakras, and you can learn about the 7 energy centers in your body and what's blocking them, so that you can, you know, it's all this kind of stuff. The chakras, that's based in Hinduism. So why is it that we have anyone that's in the church bringing in Hindu mysticism?
There's a lot of
and then charging people for it.
There's a lot of members of the church that are actually, just because a person's really kind and nice and they're doing something good, they say, they think that it's okay because they're doing it as service or something like that, or because they're helping people. I've read some of the comments on my thread that I posted in regards of what we're talking about, and I was not necessarily shocked at all, because I knew that there's people that follow my channel that disagree with me, but they still follow my channel for some reason. But it's like they they don't really understand the roots, the if you go deep into what all that is, they have no idea what they're getting into. Like literally, I mean, I'm being dead serious. I've heard stories, and I have a close friend that went through some very scary things that she'll never forget, and it traumatized her for the rest of her life, and that's never going to go away. Never going to go away. Because if I would have saw that, I would have been terrified. This friend told me of a story, and she doesn't like talking about it, but she doesn't mind me, you know, sharing what she shared, because she did not share everything to me. She can't. And but she's told me that, you know, there's at one time she was into the energy healing through JR. And she was getting into it, and she liked it, and you know, basically getting to know what's the deal. And I guess she even might have had exchanges through email or something like that, maybe phone calls. I have no idea. But she one time, I guess she was going to go get a session, and it never happened. But I guess her home teacher showed up to her house, and while they were there, everyone saw the same being in that room, and it's terrified everyone. And every time she even describes that, she's just, and she just can't go on even to tell me more. And even though I want to know more, and I sometimes tell her that, hey, you need to share this, because people are really into this stuff and they have no idea what they're getting into. And am I still on there?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So they have no idea. I've seen stuff myself, but I was never into that. But every time I expose this, all these things, something is always happening with me or my home or something. And I already know, because I always feel that spirit that is trying to scare me or do something in order for me to not go on and expose this. Like, I'm pretty sure I'll feel it today or tomorrow even, or something like that. But it always happens. But I will never stop. You know, I will never stop as long as I feel it's appropriate, you know, or safe even, because you just never know.
So let me ask you this really quick. What do you say to somebody? I heard this argument recently. You know, what's the difference between reading Harry Potter, because that has wizards in it and has spells and stuff like that? What's the difference between that and receiving services from these type of people? So what would be your argument?
Well, my argument, it would be this, and I've seen Harry Potter here and there, but I never was really into it, so I couldn't get into it. But somebody could say something about watching The Flash or watching superheroes, same thing. Not necessarily wizards, but according to those characters, they do have symbolism in them. If nobody knows, they can get into that too, deep into that too. But the thing is that for me, Harry Potter, say for example, if it's a problem or a bad, you shouldn't be watching it. The only thing I could think of is you're probably inviting a spirit that maybe should not be there. But the difference with actually doing it with the energy healing and all that, you're inviting and you're receiving the blessing, kind of like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're
well, because like in one, you know that you're reading fiction. It's a story. There's lots of stories. There's stories in the Bible about this kind of stuff, but you know that it's either history or it's fiction. But if you're like actively receiving those kind of services, then you're like participating in it, in believing it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Harry Potter is going to be something that's going to be, I know you're saying it's fiction, but some might say, oh, well, then since you know horror movies are fiction as well, why don't you just watch a horror movie and nothing will happen? I mean, you're still inviting something that you might not want, but I don't think Harry Potter is something that is tragically something scary or anything like that. I don't. Some
Oh, it's
members that I know are actually very strict of their faith, which is our faith, but very strict that they will not watch Harry Potter.
It's like reading, I mean, Hans Christian Andersen or other books of fiction, you know, Hansel and Gretel or whatever. It depends on what like you guys said, what your mindset is and what
Mhm.
what you know, where, just like Halloween. I don't think there's anything wrong with dressing up and going to trunk or treat, and even dressing a little scary if you want. I don't, if you want to dress like Dracula or a mummy, or there's a,
But there's some members that will actually disagree with that.
I know.
And I'm actually half and half with that. You know, I'm half. Like I like Halloween. I don't mind Halloween if you're dressing up as a princess or say any kind of Marvel comic character. You know, when it comes to scary stuff, I don't like
Yeah.
it. I particularly don't like it because, as they say, usually those who dress up in Halloween and you dress up for something is usually something that you want to be. It's like that is you're actually like you know, you want to be Superman, right? You're gonna dress up like Superman. And sometimes when you want to dress up like a witch, maybe you do want to be a witch, or maybe there's something there in your spirit that attracts witches, and that's not a good thing.
I think you're right, because Halloween, it's one of those times where it's officially okay to dress up, and it's like, oh, but it's just Halloween. But I think you're right. I think that there's some people that kind of like act out their fantasy a little bit by dressing up.
I think those people are just strange to begin with.
I think for
I
some,
think it's all
actually
things in moderation. You know, I mean, you can, like I said, you can read you can read some works of fiction and look at it like it was a good story, or you could be really screwed up inside and take it to another level that you don't need to.
Well,
You know
I think
what I mean?
it's potentially a symptom of a deeper problem with some people.
Right.
You know, it's not the problem itself. It's who you are as a person, and you have that moment where you can kind of like let that out and have it be socially acceptable. But you know, I think in general, like we've read Harry Potter here. I haven't read it, but my kids did, and I felt like okay with it. I think it's important to kind of like feel the spirit and just use some good sense. Like, yeah, I'd agree that like probably most scary movies you should probably avoid. Definitely like horror movies, because they just bring a dark spirit, and I feel like if you're sensitive to the spirit, you'll feel it.
Mhm.
And there's also just kind of the guideline that we read in the scriptures that we should avoid the very appearance of evil, right? So like I wouldn't feel comfortable going to an energy healer, because that feels like the appearance, that feels like sorcery, or it feels like witchcraft. It feels like something that's not in harmony with the church. And it's not, frankly, it's not.
Yeah, I think I want to retract that statement when I said I guess there's nothing quite wrong with it, but there's a lot wrong with it. I guess what I meant by that was there's nothing, you can find a little bit of, for instance, if someone wasn't a member of the church and they were doing those things, I think it's a lot different than if somebody is a member of the church, maybe even has a testimony, and then they fall into that darkness. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's right for the other person, but at least the other person doesn't have that knowledge. What really bugs me is when there's people that once had that knowledge of the gospel, and maybe they're still active, or maybe they're not. Maybe they have a temple recommend, maybe they don't, and they're practicing that stuff. You know what I'm saying?
But I don't think I don't think they actually know. If I'm going to practice, well, it all depends. Like, say for example, there is a lot of members that practice it and don't think there's generally something wrong with it. You know,
Right.
there's very few that actually know that it's wrong.
Like, how strong was their testimony to begin with? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't want to say that. I mean, if you want to dig like that, I guess that'll be pretty much true. But
or just genuinely confused, like they genuinely don't know better.
Right.
yeah, but I think most of the people genuinely don't.
I see what you're
even-
saying. I see what you're saying.
even then, after so many warnings, or say per se, because how the way they feel about us, that we are attacking them or judging them, that I believe that they most of the time they feel bad that we are doing that to them. You know what I mean? And that to me is genuinely not knowing that they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
You know, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what? Let me tell you
Well-
something. Like I'm honestly, like yesterday when I made that post on YouTube, on I don't know, in some of the groups yesterday about that video that I saw. I was only able to see half of it, or a little bit over half of the video, and I just had to turn it off. It was enough for me to already discern what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, and I saw the other people not really getting or understanding what they're really receiving. That's what I felt. The person talking, I don't want to be mean, and I don't want to say anything, but I could just say that person was being really careful of what they're saying.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah, because it could be, but it does not mean they're hiding something. It was more like it could be that, or it could be like I'm going to be careful what I say because I don't want them to take it wrong. Because people right away, oh, what do you mean by that? That's satanic or whatever. And so maybe genuinely, like I said, maybe this person, you know, doesn't want people to think that way, and maybe believes what she's doing is right. I don't think she's doing it to hurt people. I mean, that's kind of weird, don't you think? I mean, unless you're a really evil person, you know.
But there are those people. There are wolves in sheep's clothing. Like wolves in sheep's clothing wouldn't be very effective unless they know how to act like sheep and look like sheep. So I'm not saying that that's the case with this individual. I don't know. Only God knows, and that's why we can't judge. We can't see her cards. You know, we can't see her hand. But
the only one that I can actually say is JR. She, I mean, absolutely already admitted, you know, and she said a lot of things about the prophets. So she's totally against, you know, a lot of things of the church. And I think she went absolute big time apostate.
Yeah.
And she made herself into a prophet, and that's it. I mean, that was the choice that she made, period.
Yeah.
But this individual, I don't think so. And in case she's watching this, I never crossed my mind, even though I'm very bold of what I say when I type stuff. I'm very bold, and because I like to cut things short. That's why I'm bold about it. I want to cut it short. It was never intended to hurt her feelings or anything. What I did do wrong is say her name, and I shouldn't have. I think that's where I should have not have done, I believe me, I repented of that, and I haven't even deleted it, and I need to delete it. But throughout the morning at work, I was thinking about the whole situation, and I think after this video, it's going to be very rare of me to even talk about things like this, because not that I cannot talk about these things, but not make a video because of somebody or because of someone put out something.
Yeah.
Because it feels like my intent is to attack, and that's not my intent. my intent is to
Bring awareness.
yeah, it's awareness, and it always has been. But I also have to think about what other members feel. You know, I know many of the members, maybe you guys even might think, no, that's okay, because some people, some people in the comments were okay of what I said, but you know, after general conference and all this, you know, about how the way we're attacking each other and arguing and all that other stuff, I made a decision to change and be more humble than I'm trying to be already, and I'm trying to take another, you know, step. You know, I'm trying to become better and better and better, and obviously failing.
Well, I have a thought about that because, yeah, one of the big themes right now is that we're trying to become a Zion people and be one and avoid contention. But one part about that, okay, so take for example, Elder Holland. He had to address a situation that was going on at BYU this year. He at the beginning of their school year, he gave a talk to the faculty and staff and professors, and in the most meek and humble way, he took head on the issues that were going on there with professors that were teaching, you know, basically things against the doctrine of the church, and then certain groups that are becoming very vocal at BYU. So I think there's a time that's appropriate, because like we can't just like sit by and let them take over. We shouldn't attack. We should be meek, but inevitably, when you talk about truth or when you talk about righteous principles, it is for
Offensive.
a fact gonna upset some people.
It's offensive.
When President Hall or when Elder Holland did that, everybody lost their minds. Like you would think that he was just like the most vicious, horrible person if you listen to some of those people. And there are members of the church that got really mad at President Holland because they're all wrapped up in these worldly philosophies and they didn't like what he had to say. But he said it in such a not kind, loving way. So my take on it is I don't want to attack people specifically, but I do want to attack ideas or philosophies. And with this particular situation, I'm going to do a little bit of a playlist. I don't know if it's going to be like maybe 5 videos, maybe 5 to 10 videos, just talking about astrology, energy healing, for the sake of people that are genuinely being confused and influenced by, you know, other people that are talking about this stuff currently, so that they have somewhere to turn to. But it should definitely be done with the spirit of meekness. And I'll tell you what, I made a video today that was not so humble, and it was a little bit more on the attack. And then I ended up deleting it because I felt bad as well. So I took that off my channel. It's got to be done with love and meekness, but I do think that these things have to be said so that, you know, you, me, and us three, we're influencers, right? And we should try and do our best to be influencers for good and just be there for people that need comfort or need some more information on these topics.
Agreed.
How about I go ahead and read some more?
Okay.
I mean, are you guys up for that?
Yeah.
Okay. This is more complicated by the fact that the science may have grown out of the superstition. That is to say, belief in the theory that stars influence human affairs could have been the motivation for serious study of the heavenly bodies by those who eventually developed a basis for the ancient knowledge of astronomy. By the time of the Middle Ages, astrology and astronomy were often regarded as one and the same and were closely associated with alchemy, magic, and other occult practices. So even back then, I mean, a long time ago, there was people knew the difference. I mean, didn't know, not the difference between astronomy and astrology, but there was never a time in the scriptures where astrology was a good thing.
Yeah, and in fact, it was condemned.
You know?
You have a lot of scriptures that talk about all different sorts of not just even astrology, but just kind of that whole world of sorcery, necromancy, divination, magicians, wizards that peep, and sorceresses and all that stuff. You know what they're talking about, and they're talking about that kind of behavior essentially.
You know, I understand where you guys are coming from, Marco, when you were talking about how people today, you know, do they know? A lot of people don't know what they're getting themselves into. I've noticed, I was talking to Jared even about this a couple days ago. It's not surprising, but it's obvious that there are a lot of people in this generation of the church that don't know their own gospel, that don't know the doctrine. And it's easy for them to get confused. And so it's our obligation, those of us who have testimonies of the gospel, to bring it, like we said, to bring awareness, not to be mean or criticize, but what does the Lord say? He's the rock of offense. What's that verse?
I'm not
I
sure.
heard that one.
That basically the gospel's offensive to those who don't like it. I'm not saying the wicked. Let's just say the wicked. Yeah. And go ahead.
There's a lot of people getting confused right now because they look at being united as a good thing, and it is if you're being united in righteousness. But this is a gospel of separation. After this life, we're going to be sorted to one of 4 general places. It's a time of testing, and we are to leave the world behind. We are to, distance ourselves from evil things and evil influences. And when Christ came, he said, I think this is in Matthew, I can't remember what chapter, but he said, I came to earth not to bring peace, but a sword. Mm-hmm. And, your family is all, the father is going to be against the son, and the daughter against the daughter-in-law against the mother-in-law. You know what verse or what scripture I'm talking about? Simply meaning that people are going to make their choices, and not everyone is going to accept the gospel. And you still love them, but you have to stand up for the gospel. And Jesus Christ should come very first in your lives before wife or child or parent or anybody else. So a lot of people right now are trying to be like, oh, we all need to be one. We all need to be inclusive. But that doesn't mean that we accept things that go contrary to the gospel. Again, Elder Holland said that Christ, he doesn't remember a time in scripture where Christ said, I love you, and I love you just how you are, but because I love you, you are exempt from my commandments. That's not how it goes. So we love and we include and we invite, but we unite in righteousness, and we don't bring in dark influences or apostate philosophies and practices.
Right.
Someone in the comment section said that, interesting. I've had a couple of people, not only in my comment section and my thread on YouTube, but even on MeWe, they actually know her. And
know who?
The person that was in that video.
Okay.
And they said good things about her, and that I'm getting her wrong or whatever. It was like I said, I shouldn't have never mentioned her name, because then now it makes it her. It's about her, but it's not. It's more about what we're talking about. But I think that the issue here is that, I don't know, it's so hard to say. I hate myself because I'm so bold. I can't say things. I can't say things, but when You know, I'll put an example. Okay, sorry, I'm over here thinking too. One of my daughters is living with me now. She's 15 years old. She came early, moved in a couple, I would say a month ago, maybe a little longer, because her mom, honestly, I feel like she did not want to deal with the situation. Um, so her mom, I believe that she's doing stuff too. I believe that she's into energy work and things like that. She's not a member of the church, but she learned this stuff from her dad in Mexico. And at first, when she first told me about it, she talked about massaging and things like that, all these techniques of massages, and I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be good. You know, that'd be good for you to do, because then you can. That's like you could do work on the side, and that'd be good for you. You know. And I was all for it. And later, I would say years went by, and I didn't think anything of it. I had my suspicions later on, just because how the way she would talk or say things or tell my daughter. But my daughter used to come over here and tell me that my mom told me that I lived a different life before, that I was this person, and now I'm supposed to be this person, and the reason why I'm here again is because I didn't get it right the last time, and all this other stuff. And this is the same doctrine that JR teaches, like, you know. And it's just like, you know, I tell her, then why was Christ crucified? For what? Because you know what? If that's true, the church is false. Everything is false. Even the Bible, everything about Christ is false if this is true, because it does not make sense to me. But they get this stuff. Even members of the church will get this stuff because of what's being taught in the temple, and they twist it all around. They twist everything around what's being said in the temple, and they get their own so-called revelations of what they think is true. And so even then, on top of that, they'll receive angels, dreams, or whatever, and they'll teach it to others. And this is how it all begins. You know, more people start teaching this stuff, and maybe, like I said, some people get into so really deep, and nothing has happened yet. But when something happens, very scary to them, sometimes they'll make up a story, or not. I don't want to say make up. They'll start saying, "Oh, well, remember how Joseph Smith was attacked? Well, that's what happened to me. I must be doing something right." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, how many times have you heard that? Anyway.
It's gosh. This other person, they're kind of like borderline with that, with the whole reincarnation thing. I checked out the website, and it didn't have anything about reincarnation, but how we have, I guess this person's belief is that we have trauma from our ancestors. So parents, grandparents, and back, like they have trauma, and then they pass it on to us. And so she advertises the ability to help you get rid of, to drain that trauma out, right? So I guess like basically like Adam and Eve, they wouldn't have had any ancestral trauma because they were the first humans. But like now that we're in the latter days, like we just have ton. And it's like very borderline with wanting to like take that extra step to like talk about reincarnation and stuff like that. It's just something that these kind of people are drawn to. Did you have something, Troy?
Well, I think my biggest hangup is that if it's not in the curriculum of the church, if it's not taught by our prophet and apostles and the general authorities, it hasn't been in the history of the church. Like we were talking about Joseph Smith. I don't think Joseph Smith continued to practice those things that were indigenous to the time, you know, and otherwise it would still be in the church from the time of Joseph Smith. We would have inherited that culture. So that's my biggest thing. It's not in the curriculum. It's not in the program. It's not taught by the brethren. And so, and it's not the priesthood. It's and when I see those things and I hear people talking about them, I don't feel the spirit. I don't feel a good spirit. I feel an unfamiliar spirit. And there's a scripture that says, what is it? Leviticus chapter 19, verse 31. Regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. And there's a whole bunch. I'm sure you guys have run into these scriptures when you were preparing for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's my biggest thing. So I agree with both of you guys, what you've been saying. It's until we start learning about these things, which we probably never will, in the church. I'm talking about, like I don't know, like astronomy or astrology, then I don't know much about these things. But I know that they don't bring me good feelings.
No.
The signs of the heavens that I know of, that people might take it as astronomy or whatever. There is a lot in there that we can learn from the church, actually. But I stopped learning from those things because I was so focused in that, and I didn't want to end up like Brother Larson, because to me it felt like that's all he did, and that was his work, and it was just all he did. And people can get really addicted to certain things that you will forget what you're really here for or what you're supposed to be doing. Some teachings are just, they're good, but like, say for example, not genealogy, but where the Book of Mormon was, where it happened, and where did is it in the I can't think right now.
In the
Book of Mormon
Heartland.
geography.
Heartland, yeah, and things like that, and so we can go on and on and on, and still people disagree with each other. I mean, for how many years? It's never going to end. Never going to end. I always say, hey, why don't you just be happy that there is proof or information out there that the Book of Mormon is true, and that's it. Don't fight over, oh, it happened in the Heartland, or it was in Mesoamerica, whatever, and things like that. But there is a lot of truth in many things. But like I said, Satan does like to twist things around.
Mm-hmm.
He does. He will twist it around, and he will teach you to twist it around, because you're going to believe that you received revelations and new things. For example, and I don't know what you were meaning of. Well, Troy, when you mentioned about Joseph Smith and some of the things are not taught him, like, what do you mean? Like,
I mean,
what
like,
part?
for instance, like people back then used to, we were talking about it today, Jared, like water divining, or what do they call that?
Yeah,
Is it called
like
water
divination
divining?
rods. Yeah.
And even though people had, I don't know how many people had peep stones back then, but it was common for people to use the rocks to see where gold was, or lost tools, or whatever, lost treasure.
Yeah.
I don't, if Joseph and so on and so forth. I mean, I don't know. I just know there was a lot of folk magic type it was a kind of a folky magic type environment, right? Back then, because they didn't have technology. That was the closest thing they had to technology, was, and they got those things from the Old Testament, but it was a and okay, here's my point. I can't think straight either. I got a migraine right now.
Oh no.
But here's my point. If Joseph Smith if those things continued with him, wouldn't we have been practicing those things? Or wouldn't we have more of that in our history? Wouldn't Brigham Young have practiced it? Wouldn't John Taylor have
You mean like the
practiced it?
stones and stuff like that?
Or whatever, like,
Well, I mean, prophets it's not nothing new with seer stones. We all know that. What are you drinking there? Better not be an
Dr.
energy drink.
Pepper. But
Keep on.
okay,
Even that.
okay, check this out. I know what you're saying, but it was all done with the priesthood. It was all done in wisdom and order.
Right.
It wasn't like done with with a different spirit or feeling.
Well,
And it,
trust me, I'm pretty sure there was a lot of members that were trying to be like Joseph Smith and grab their own stones.
there
And
was,
things like
there's
yeah.
stories about that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's the same thing today. What members are doing, or not even non-members that are doing that believe that it's from God, you know, and they take it upon themselves to do
Right.
things and receive revelation or power, you know.
I think it comes from the desire to be special, to be the
Yes.
one that understands the deeper doctrines, and to,
Right.
you know, with like a lot of these like second coming timelines, like being the person that cracked the code and you know exactly how it's going to happen. Because I think that brings a sense of feeling special, and some people live for that. They want to be seen as the one that figured it out. So I think that's why a lot of people get into some of these things. Makes them feel like they're doing more, you know, they're not just doing the boring stuff like working on repentance and faith and prayer. No, you know, they're beyond that. And no, that like we need to work on those core skills, you know, repentance and admitting when we're wrong so that we can repent, and praying and having faith. You know, and that's like the big problem with like the energy healing, with like when it comes to like healing trauma or anxiety or things like that. You know, Christ came here to do that for us. Like if you've been wronged by somebody and you're holding a grudge, or you have internal wounds, you know, we rely on Christ. You know, maybe we get a blessing of comfort. Or maybe if it's like a mental issue, then you go see a professional, because like there are things that they do for you. If you have depression, anxiety, you can be prescribed medications or whatever. But the point is that Christ can heal you. You don't need to go to an energy healer to drain out dark energy that's accumulated in your chakras, right?
Mhm.
So
well, even
it's almost like, it's kind of like,
okay.
there's like an audacity there that someone is like kind of stepping in and filling the Christ role and be like, no, I can fix you internally because I have magic powers, and you just have to drain your chakra and you're good. What are you going to say, Troy?
Well, even during the time of Joseph Smith, there were things like folk healing. I'm reading this right now from Wikipedia. It says practices of the culture included folk healing, folk medicine, folk magic, and divination, remnants of which have been incorporated or rejected to varying degrees into, and I don't agree with this part, into the liturgy, culture, and practice of modern Latter-day Saints. I don't see it at all. I don't see, so now we have energy healing. Sounds a lot like folk healing to me. But if that was still going on, if all of those superstitious things were still being practiced, then it would still be, I'm not talking about divine revelation and the priesthood when Joseph Smith would use a stone, just like prophets of old in the Old Testament. Didn't they have those stones on the plate, the breastplate that they wore?
The high priest did. Each one of the
priest.
stones represented a tribe of Israel.
And it was all done in wisdom and order with the correct priesthood, the correct spirit. And when people start going rogue, like Marco was saying, and they start finding their own little peep stones and giving their own revelation, and like you were saying, Jared, too. And I learned this before, we would, anything, whether it's good or evil, I call it a, oh goodness, what's it called? When you inherit something, you can inherit culture, right? Whether it's good or bad. And it would show how long's the church been here? 180 years. It would be showing up. It would have showed up 100 years ago, but you don't see it. You don't see anything like that. You see the priesthood, you see temple work, the faith, repentance, baptism, and the Holy Ghost, and there's nothing quirky. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's not what the problem is. People like JR and others are giving that people are seeing that and they think that we do that.
Yeah, but I don't know where they get that
like
from. What are they seeing? Oh, you mean, I see what
you
you're saying.
Like say for example, even when they show what's that woman and Dad Chad Daybell story?
Right.
Now they think, man, Mormons are crazy.
Yeah.
That's what the end of the world type of stuff. People that go so extreme of prepping and all this other stuff. I mean, that's known already. That's a lot of members have a problem of that.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly it. I'm speaking within the church. People say, why don't we practice it? Are those who sympathize with people that do the energy healings and things like that. It's because it's not who we are. Our prophets don't talk about it. Our apostles don't teach it. It's not in our curriculum because it's satanic, plain and simple.
Because we have in the church provides solutions for these problems. Once again, if you're looking for direction in your life, we have prayer, we have the scriptures, we have patriarchal blessings. If you're looking to be healed, there's medical doctors, and then we also have priesthood blessings. These other practices, they're counterfeits of the real thing. And I think that they're inspired by Satan, frankly. And another thing that we need to think about is, do these people actually believe what they're doing? Because I think it is possible that some of them are doing it just for money. Because again, when you go to this person's website, if you want a class on healing from anxiety, it's $500. If you want that astrology reading, it's $450. If you want help with your marriage, and by the way, in this particular website, it's just for women. So if you're a woman, you can take this class, and that's like about $500. And a lot of the other stuff is like less money than that, but it's still like good amounts of money, like $75 or more. So you have to think about what's the motivation for some of these people. I don't know this person's heart. It may not be the money. I'm just saying that they charge quite a bit for what they do. And I'm seeing a lot of people having interest in that stuff. So
it's kind of interesting why in the world they would think doing something like that, even if it was for service, as they say it is, why are you charging them so much money?
Because it's a racket.
I mean, if it was $20, I could be like, okay, it was probably because for your time and whatever that you had to spend some time away from your family and whatnot, or to keep your website up. I could probably believe that, but $500. You know how many people out there have anxiety that would love to get that out of their life, and members are falling into this. This is crazy.
Even back in the 1800s, it says that Orson Pratt condemned astrology, and in 1852, Brigham Young, for a moment, gave his approval to a convert. I don't know if this is true, to study and begin practicing astrology, but only to change his recommendation a year later, calling it a dangerous thing to meddle with. So it wasn't something that was even handed down from Joseph Smith. And you can see how it was not sanctioned by the brethren, even back then.
Yeah, even to this day. So you have the argument, well, they talk about energy healing in the church handbook, but the church handbook isn't scripture. So what do you say? What is your answer to that argument? Which I think that's a silly argument, but
I believe policy is just as important as a commandment.
Hold on. Your energy healing or energy is in the handbook?
Yeah.
What does it say?
Let me
Did
pull
I
it
miss
up.
that part? Did I?
It's specifically in the church handbook.
Oh, please read it to me.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Hallelujah, brother.
Yeah. Okay. So while he's looking for that, I remember her, and maybe that's why I got all mixed up with astrology and astronomy. I heard her mention something about the blood moon and it's significant, and that something is going to happen. I think she mentioned that in that video.
Yeah. That basically like almost like a portal or a window of time would open because
And how
when
does
you
she
have a
know
lunar
this?
eclipse,
And how does she know this? I'm being facetious.
that's my whole thing. Where does that knowledge or that information come from?
So
But I think you're talking about like between the lunar and solar eclipse, there's like a window that opens up.
So here's the question. For me, when what was it, the 2017, and we had eclipses, and we had the sign of the heavens of the Book of Revelation. I feel that they're a sign for something, and I think that something will happen. Is there a difference between what she's saying, what we're saying, or I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I think this particular individual, I think that she accepts that too, but that's not within traditional astrology. That's not part of the New Age. She's marrying these two together because she says that she's a member of the church. So she accepts, our way that we look at space and planets and stuff like that. But she also has that other stuff from the New Age.
Mm-hmm.
So
she believes.
Well, what do you believe about it, Marco?
No, I believe that there are signs,
Right.
and
we know that.
And I pretty much feel that they do mean something. We most likely don't know what it is, but there are signs, and there are times and seasons for them.
Right.
But from what I think she was talking about, I don't know if it was because that something might happen, like, a great big earthquake, or maybe people are going to feel bad today or tomorrow, or what, or I don't know, because the only thing I was focusing more was when she kept saying energy, I was like, oh, here we go. But when it came to that, I don't know exactly what she meant by, what all that meant, what she believes. I don't really get into it.
Who the heck knows? Usually their favorite words are energy and vibrations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have the quote here. So this is from the church handbook. It's in chapter 38. It says, church members are discouraged from seeking miraculous or supernatural healing from an individual or group that claims to have special methods for accessing healing power outside of prayer and properly perform priesthood blessings. These practices are often referred to as energy healing. Other names are also used. Such promises for healing are often given in exchange for money. And that's exactly what this person does, and it's a lot of money. There's another section. Oh, go ahead.
When was that added?
I think
about
recently.
A year ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's another section. It's in the same chapter. It's titled The Occult. And it starts off, that which is of God is light. Doctrine and Covenants 50:24. The occult focuses on darkness and leads to deception. It destroys faith in Christ, right? Because you're basically putting faith in these kind of like charlatan type people.
Mm-hmm.
The occult includes Satan worship. It also includes, aside from just Satan worship, it also includes mystical activities that are not in harmony with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Such activities include, but are not limited to, fortune telling, curses, and healing practices that are imitations of the priesthood power of God. Church members should not engage in any form of Satan worship or participate in any way with the occult. They should not focus on such darkness in conversations or in church meetings.
So isn't that, how can that not be clear? And even if it was borderline of what they're doing, you're in the borderline of getting into something much deeper. How I don't understand
Well,
how members are missing it. See, and I didn't even know if that was added. And look at now. See, maybe that's what people need to know. Members of the church. I have no idea. I don't know.
So my thing is that the argument is, well, this isn't scripture, this is policy. But the thing is that these handbooks are based on scripture and they're based on church doctrine. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. I don't like this whole argument that there's like a difference between policy and doctrine. Like there is, but the policy is based on the doctrine. Like I was in the military, okay, and we had regulations, which those are basically like the scriptures of the military, the regulations. But then you also have standard operating procedures. And the SOP just defines how you're going to comply with the regulations. It's based on the regulations. So it's like the same thing, basically. It's just how you're complying with it. And that's the same case with the church handbook. It's based on the scriptures and the doctrine of the church.
plus, I think just the mere disobedience of anything that's policy or commandment doesn't allow you to feel the spirit.
Avoid the very appearance of evil.
Right. But no, and exactly. And also, no matter what the policy is, if you're willfully being disobedient to it, you're going to have the spirit of apostasy in some ways, or the spirit of disobedience, and you're not going to feel the Holy Ghost. It's like when I was on my mission, and when you didn't follow mission rules, hey, we didn't have the same mission rules that other missions had. But if we weren't following mission rules, you were being disobedient and you weren't filling the spirit, because you're being disobedient to mission rules.
I think
that's absolutely, that's how it was on my mission too. Yeah.
Right.
in that same this individual that always argues over that doctrine and church policy thing, and it always brings it up, and it has me think, like, why does this person continue to do this? And I feel honestly is because the person wants to justify himself of what he thinks or whatever. All those policies to me is to keep you on the safe side. You know, there are so many members in the church back in the day when they did everything, whatever they wanted, and some claimed it was spiritual. Even today, when I go to church, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, the same old thing. You know, people stop going to church because it's so constant, the same thing, the same program, same everything, and they get bored. That's number one. And because they get bored, they start looking for other things, other information, trying to get hopefully some understanding of the deep doctrines, as what you call them. But when they do that, it's like you begin to be disobedient to all that the church has asked us to not do and to do. When I thought about I go to sacrament, right? And I used to think, this is me before, I'm like, oh my gosh, the same old thing, and it's so boring now. And why is it always said this way? And why does every it's always said in a certain way? Why do we always have to thank the pianist? Why do we have to think, or like, this is like, come on, we already know that he plays a piano. We don't need to know. But they do things in a way because they don't want us to go up there and say and do whatever we want. Everything is a program, a set in stone. Is that how you say it, Troy?
Set in stone.
Set in stone is this is the way we're going to do it, because people
Is that what I say all the time?
Yeah, you do. It's like they do whatever they want. It's the same thing, and I honestly believe, and not always, not 100%. I'm not saying this is what I think this is the reason why we do it. When it comes to priesthood blessings, when it comes to baptizing and everything, there's a reason why we say a particular way. And a lot of it has to do because that's how the way you call unto the Father. But it also is doing it the right way, because you don't want to do whatever you want, think this is how the way you're going to do it, and it's going to work. It's not going to work because it's not supposed to be done that way. So, I mean, a lot of members think they receive some kind of inspiration to do it differently because they want to be different. They want to feel different. And hey, maybe we should listen to that person because I'm bored with this guy. He says the same thing, and this guy seems more interesting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because that's how churches break away from other churches, and you have all these different religions. And you just look at these people that we're talking about, and not just like on this issue, but many different things. Like if the church didn't standardize things and make it so it's done that way, and have a solid foundation, then it would easily just break away with all the different whims of all these different people that want to do it their way.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, guys, how long have we been at this?
An hour and a half, I think.
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
I'm good. I'm good ending it here. I have a few things I need to do tonight. It's 9:30 where I'm at.
I think I need to study more about this. And I think one of the things that I'm interested in knowing more about is how much folk magic and, you know, the traditions of the early 1830s influenced the church after Joseph Smith became prophet, after he was baptized, not before, but after. I want to know a little bit more about that, and about the difference between the astrological signs and the biblical signs, the scriptural signs. To be honest, I wasn't that prepared for this because I did study a lot today, and it's hard. There's a lot out there to learn. You can't do it in one day.
Yeah. I think the best thing that you can do is just, again, like with people that try and put together timelines or theories or whatever, one pattern that I see with a lot of them is that they'll go to like other Christian churches and see what their interpretation is of second coming events, and then try and like graft that in with ours. But it's pretty clear that they don't go first to our own interpretation as the church. Like I was telling you, it's not recording anymore, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
it is.
still recording.
Oh, are you gonna
You
end
want
it
me to
though?
stop? No, they want. Why?
Why do you want to be
said
secret
anything
for,
wrong.
Jared? Why
Huh?
you want to be secret for, huh?
You haven't said anything wrong. You're good, brother.
All right. Well, so
Do you want me to stop it now? If I stop it, they're going to be mad
And they're gonna think
because they want to know more.
Well, I'm doing that playlist and about a certain timeline, and it's pretty clear that it seems like at least in certain portions, this person went to outside sources before they checked with what our church believes about certain things. And specifically, I was talking to you about it on the phone, Troy, about the Revelation 12 and the interpretation of it, because evangelical Christians have a different interpretation of it than we do. If you simply just look at the chapter heading to that chapter, it tells you what it is, and it's not the same as Christian churches. And that person incorporated that in their timeline, the interpretation of the other churches. So I think with anything, first just start with the church. Like look up Ensign articles and just do a general search and look at LDS sources first. I don't think it's bad to like look at what others believe, because we don't have all the truth. Like they can have some truth and stuff. You know, you can look at Judaism and learn some things, but like start with our church first. Make sure you have a solid understanding of what we already believe.
Right.
Jared, I made a video about that. I don't know. It's been a while, a couple years ago. But here's the thing. I know what the heading says on that. My question to you is why why does it show up today? And when the heading says what it says.
Well, I think it's because it has to do with the church coming out of the wilderness. Because according to, I haven't done my own study in this, but like, have you come across the channel Gospel Lessons?
Yes.
Yeah.
He did that thing where he I guess pointed out how that actually showed up when Joseph Smith received the plates, which that makes a lot of sense because the woman had fled into the wilderness and now she's coming back. And now with it coming up in 2017, it might mean that this time, you know, the period between the first one and this one, that was like the main work that's been done as far as like harvesting goes. We might be in a different, at a hinge point right now, you know? We're still doing missionary work, but the church is like looking pretty different. So that's what I think. I think it still has great significance, but I think it kind of like heralds back to that. Just the fact that, hey, maybe this the fullness or the time of the Gentiles, maybe it's coming to a close.
Right.
I'm trying to look for the heading right now. I do remember it. John sees the imminent apostasy of the church. Is it what chapter was it?
Chapter 12.
Yeah. Okay. And he also sees a war in heaven in the beginning when sin was cast out. He sees the continuation of the war on heaven. And that's what I talked about in my video. I'm trying to remember if it comes from the wilderness or goes to the wilderness is what I'm trying to remember.
She flees. God prepares a place for her in the wilderness, and then she flees to the wilderness. And then in Doctrine and Covenants, that's all about her coming back out of the wilderness and out of obscurity.
Okay, that's interesting too because I didn't take a look at the Doctrine and Covenants part.
Yeah, that's actually kind of like a recurring theme in the Doctrine and Covenants is the church coming out of obscurity and out of the wilderness.
Right. The woman is always the church.
Yeah.
And then there's that. Are you guys talking about that constellation?
Virgo. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So there's a difference between studying the heavens and then what soothsayers, modern day soothsayers do. They take that and they use it to do readings and false patriarchal blessings.
Look, like you have the constellations, which themselves, it's just a map of the
it's
sky.
Not evil, right?
It's a map of the sky that's been around forever. In the zodiac are the 12 constellations that the planets go through as you're observing it from Earth. But it's as though you took a map of the world and you told somebody, oh, you know, you're in Russia right now, so that means that you're going to have an affair soon because right now you're in Russia. Or, you know, it doesn't make any sense. That's what the astrologers do. It's like, no, it's just Russia. That's the political boundaries of that country. It doesn't mean that you're going to have an affair or you're going to get divorced. Where does that come from?
Want to hear a funny story?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. This is a funny one. You're going to love this. So before I was a church member, of course, this was at least, I would say 25 years ago or more. My first wife was my girlfriend first. She wasn't my wife right away. She was pregnant. And, you know, we were going through so much with our parents that they didn't accept us to be together because the way we did it. And it was just her parents didn't like me and my parents did not like her. And so we called someone on the phone, one of those medium people, whatever, right? And we called and asked, I guess she asked her questions. She's the one who was talking to her, asking her questions about who are we going to be together? You know, are things going to fall apart? You know, all these questions. I don't exactly remember the questions, but there was one thing that this lady said. She's like, well, it's not gonna work out. And you know me, macho man, what do you mean it's not gonna work out? What did she say? So I got the phone and I'm like, what do you mean it's not gonna work out? Well, it's not because it just won't. And I go, why? We're about to have a baby. She didn't know this. She goes, a baby? Well, how are you gonna have a baby? Well, what do you mean? And I don't know, I don't remember exactly how it came out, but she thought I was a girl.
Oh.
Because of my voice. You get
Awesome.
it? My voice?
Yeah.
So if you talk to me on the phone, Jared, trust me, you don't know if it's a girl or guy. But I'm telling you right now, I was like, oh, so you thought I was a girl, and I just hung up on her. You know, I was like thinking, this is a person that tells the future, tells
Yeah.
she was doing it all for money. All for
Yeah.
money.
Playing around
Yeah.
with people's lives, like people that actually believe in them, playing around with their lives.
Yeah,
Hey,
people get married to certain people because one person said, and they make these choices just like horoscopes, make all these choices because of what people say, and guess what? Doesn't work out. You know, it just
Yep.
doesn't. It might even be true. Here's another one. Let me tell you another one.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
And then I want you to tell a story. By the way, my wife thought you were a woman the first time she heard you from the other room.
See? Yeah. I always laugh at that because I know it's true.
Hey, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean,
No,
you're
no.
Hispanic. You're used to talking more like with your nose, like nasally, right?
Well,
Would you say that's why?
No, this is why, and I'll tell you why. I have a curse.
Oh.
The curse is I am the only male in my in my generation, and everyone else around me is female.
Oh man.
And so the only male in my generation on my mom's side is actually gay.
Really?
Yeah, so he doesn't count. And we always we joke about this. And so my daughters, I have 5 daughters. Okay, I have a sister. I also have a stepbrother and stepsister, but they're not my generation. They're a lot younger. They're on my dad's side. I'm talking about I've always been around my mom's side. So everyone is a girl. So I think that's why I sound like a girl.
Could be. I kind of have a higher voice. Like I've had some comments, not very frequently, but like occasionally I've had some comments. So I don't really have a deep voice or anything.
Well, I could sound like this if I wanted to.
Okay. I want to let our audience know.
Oh, are we still recording?
Yeah.
Yes. Come on, man.
I stopped the recording a while ago.
All right, I'm going to stop it right now, but here's what I'm going to say. If they go to Fair Mormon, there's a piece that says, did early members of the Mormon church believe in witchcraft? And it talks about how while some members may have believed in witchcraft, all the scriptural and primary evidence portrays their opinion of such things as negative, not positive. So there's more evidence that early members of the church during the time of Joseph Smith and Brigham Young viewed the occult, divinations and soothsaying and all of that stuff, astrology, as being wicked. So it wasn't handed down at all whatsoever.
Let me share my other story. One more.
Do you want me to hang up or?
No, I want them to hear it.
All right.
Nobody knows this about
I'm eating
me.
a Burger King taco while you're talking.
Jared, I don't know if you've been following me for a while, right, Jared?
Yeah.
From my channel. Okay, so you probably know a lot about me, but there's some things that some people do not know about. So, I used to watch a lot of horror movies. I mean, very deep, sickening, scary stuff to the point that you're going to invite something to your house. Okay. Mm-hmm. I used to play music. I used to do all this stuff, but I've never in my mind have ever thought that I was inviting something, you know. One time I went to my cousin's house and she was into the Ouija board, and
Yeah.
I didn't believe in it. I thought it was so stupid, and even then, if it was true, you should not play with that. One day she's like, "Whoa, you don't believe it? So let me ask some questions in front of you." So she started doing it, asking questions, right? And then she started asking about me, because then she wanted me to believe. So she started asking, saying that some questions, random questions. I'm like, "Oh, that's like anybody. You're probably moving it, right?" She said, I said, "You're probably moving it." She asked who liked me, and she told me who it was. I thought of, okay, well, Maria. There's a lot of Marias. I do know one Maria, but there's a lot of Marias, random, whatever, you're lying. And then I said, okay, so who's going to marry me? Who am I going to get married to? I wanted to know who's going to get married to me. So she started doing it, and it spelled out Tony. I started laughing. It's because it said Tony. I started laughing and laughing at it. Well, the thing got crazy. It started spinning around, doing all this weird stuff with her hand, though, with her hand. So I still didn't believe. She freaked out. I still didn't believe. But I still said, you're playing with darkness. You shouldn't be doing it. Well, guess what? My first wife's name is Tennille. Everybody calls her Tony.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
there, right there, it tells you that even Satan mimics the
Yeah.
truth. The truth. So
Yeah.
that being said, when we play with these things, I don't care how real it is. I don't care if you got healed. You got healed by something else. In order for you to believe and continue to believe and teach this falsehood to others and invite that evil spirit into your home.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to share that.
And the thing about it is that when we get priesthood blessings, we're not always healed. Sometimes it's the will of the Lord that we aren't healed. So if we're going to like an energy healer and they're using actual healing power that's coming from another spirit, that's like kind of overriding God's will. Like he'll allow it to happen. But if you had just like gotten the priesthood blessing, you may not have been healed, but that would be his will and it would turn out for good.